Engine 2 is on fire. We're going down. Tell my wife I love her." These terrifying words tore from the throat of 16-year-old Jake Harrison as he jolted awake from another nightmare, his sheets soaked with sweat and his heart pounding like machine gun fire. For 3 years, Jake had been haunted by the same horrific dream. He was trapped in the cockpit of a burning aircraft, flames consuming the engine as the plane spiraled toward the earth below. The screams of his crew echoed in his ears as he desperately fought to control the aircraft, knowing with absolute certainty that they were all going to die. What made these nightmares truly unsettling was not just their vivid terror, but the fact that Jake had never been on a plane, had no interest in aviation, and lived in a small Nebraska town where the closest thing to military aircraft were crop dusters spraying the cornfields. Yet somehow, this teenager who had grown up playing video games and riding dirt bikes possessed intimate knowledge of World War II bomber operations, military terminology, and flight procedures that would soon connect him to one of the war's most enduring mysteries. Jake's nightmares had begun on his 13th birthday in 2018, starting as vague dreams of falling and explosions that gradually became more detailed and specific over time. Initially, his parents, David and Carol Harrison, attributed the dreams to adolescent stress and the violent video games that were popular among Jake's friends. However, as the nightmares persisted and intensified, they became increasingly concerned about their son's mental health and well-being. Jake would wake up multiple times each night screaming about engine failures, enemy fighters, and crew members with names like Tommy and Red, who seemed as real to him as his own family and friends. The breakthrough came when Jake began talking, in his sleep, providing specific details about aircraft specifications, bombing missions, and military operations that he couldn't possibly have known through normal means. Carol, who had been monitoring Jake's sleep disturbances more closely, began recording his sleep talking, and was amazed by the technical accuracy and historical specificity of his unconscious ramblings. Jake spoke about B-24 Liberator bombers, described navigation procedures over the Pacific Theater, and provided details about Japanese fighter tactics that were consistent with historical accounts but were not covered in his high school history classes. Dr. Patricia Reynolds, a sleep specialist at the Regional Medical Center, initially focused on treating Jake's nightmares as a sleep disorder, prescribing medications and recommending sleep hygiene practices that might reduce the frequency and intensity of his dreams. However, when Carol shared the recordings of Jake's sleep talking, Dr. Reynolds was struck by the sophistication and historical accuracy of his statements. She suggested that the family consult with Dr. Michael Chen, a psychiatrist who specialized in trauma and unusual memory phenomena, to explore whether Jake's dreams might have a deeper psychological or even paranormal explanation. Dr. Chen's initial evaluation revealed a normal, healthy teenager with no signs of psychological trauma, mental illness, or exposure to wartime experiences that might explain his detailed nightmares. Jake was academically successful, socially well-adjusted, and had no family history of military service that might have provided unconscious access to war stories or combat experiences. His grandfather had been a mechanic during World War II, but had served stateside and had rarely spoken about his wartime experiences. The family had no military memorabilia, war documentaries, or historical materials that could have influenced Jake's dreams. Under hypnotic regression, Jake's memories became even more detailed and emotionally intense. Speaking in a voice that seemed older and more mature than his teenage years, he described being Lieutenant James "Jimmy" Patterson, a 22-year-old bombardier on a B-24 Liberator named Prairie Rose, operating out of a base in the Marshall Islands during 1944. Jimmy's story unfolded with remarkable consistency across multiple sessions, describing his crew members, their personalities, their fears, and their shared experiences during bombing missions over Japanese-held territories in the Pacific. The most traumatic memory involved their final mission on November 23, 1944, when Prairie Rose had been attacked by Japanese fighters while returning from a bombing run over Truk Lagoon. Jake described the terror of watching Engine 2 catch, fire, the desperate attempts to maintain altitude, and the heartbreaking decision to attempt a water landing in the vast Pacific Ocean. His emotional distress during these regression sessions was so intense that Dr. Chen often had to interrupt the hypnosis to prevent psychological trauma. The historical investigation began when Dr. Chen contacted Dr. Margaret Foster, a military historian specializing in Pacific theater operations during World War II. Dr. Foster was initially skeptical, but agreed to research whether any aircraft matching Jake's description had been involved in combat operations during the specified time period. Her investigation led to a stunning discovery. Records showed that a B-24 Liberator designated as Prairie Rose had indeed been reported missing during a mission over Truk Lagoon on November 23, 1944. The aircraft and its crew of 10 men had vanished without a trace, becoming one of thousands of unsolved mysteries from the Pacific War. The official military records confirmed that Lieutenant James Patterson had been the bombardier on Prairie Rose, exactly as Jake had described during his regression sessions. The crew roster matched the names that Jake had mentioned in his sleep, talking, including Tommy Kowalski, the tail gunner, and Red Sullivan, the radio operator. Photographs from the unit's archives showed a young man who bore a striking resemblance to Jake, though the similarity was subtle enough that it might have been coincidental. More compelling was the accuracy of Jake's knowledge about the crew's personalities, relationships, and personal details that were documented in letters and diaries that had been preserved by family members. Dr. Foster's research revealed that Prairie Rose had been part of the 307th Bombardment Group, operating from Kwajalein Atoll in the Marshall Islands during the final year of the Pacific War. The unit's mission logs and survivor interviews provided additional confirmation of details that Jake had described, including the layout of the airbase, the daily routines of bomber crews, and the specific challenges of long-range missions over the Pacific Ocean. Most remarkably, Jake's description of the November 23rd mission matched intelligence reports about Japanese fighter activity in the Truk area, including details about enemy tactics and aircraft types that were consistent with documented encounters. The psychological impact on Jake intensified as the historical connections became clear. He began experiencing not just nightmares but waking visions of his crew members, feeling their presence around him and sensing their unfinished business from the war. Jake became obsessed with learning everything he could about Prairie Rose and its crew, spending hours researching their backgrounds and trying to understand why he was experiencing Jimmy Patterson's memories. The emotional weight of carrying a dead soldier's trauma began affecting his academic performance, social relationships, and overall mental health. Jake's family struggled to understand and support their son while processing the implications of his apparent connection to a World War II airman. David, initially the most skeptical family member, found his worldview challenged by the undeniable accuracy of Jake's historical knowledge and the emotional authenticity of his experiences. Carol became Jake's primary advocate, helping him navigate the complex emotions associated with accessing traumatic memories from another lifetime, while ensuring that he continued to develop his own identity and relationships. The family consulted with religious leaders, seeking spiritual guidance about reincarnation, soul memory, and the possibility that Jake was meant to help resolve Jimmy Patterson's unfinished story. The investigation took a dramatic turn when Dr. Foster discovered that families of Prairie Rose crew members had been searching for answers about their loved one's fate for over 75 years. Several families had maintained hope that the crew might have survived the crash and been taken prisoner, while others had resigned themselves to never knowing what had happened during those final moments over the Pacific. When Dr. Foster contacted these families and shared Jake's detailed memories of the mission, their responses ranged from skeptical curiosity to profound emotional relief at finally having some answers about their relatives' final hours. The most poignant connection came from Martha Patterson Hendricks, Jimmy Patterson's niece, who had grown up hearing stories about her uncle but had never known the details of his final mission. When she met Jake and heard his description of Jimmy's thoughts and feelings during the crew's last moments, she was struck by how closely his personality matched family stories about her uncle's character, sense of humor, and devotion to his crew. Martha shared family photographs, letters, and personal effects that Jimmy had sent home before his final mission, and Jake's emotional reactions to these items convinced even skeptics that something extraordinary was happening. Jake's memories provided details that helped military historians piece together a more complete picture of Prairie Rose's final mission and the circumstances surrounding the crew's disappearance. His description of the aircraft's final position, the direction of its descent, and the approximate location where it hit the water gave researchers new leads for potentially locating the wreckage. The Department of Defense's WWII accounting agency became interested in Jake's case as a possible source of information that might help them recover the remains of missing servicemen and provide closure for their families. Dr. Chen documented Jake's case as one of the most compelling examples of apparent past life memory he had encountered, noting the verifiable historical details, emotional authenticity, and therapeutic challenges associated with helping a teenager process traumatic memories from another lifetime. Jake's experience challenged conventional understanding of consciousness, memory, and the possible survival of trauma across lifetimes. The case attracted international attention from researchers studying reincarnation, consciousness survival, and the psychological impact of unresolved wartime trauma. As Jake approached his 18th birthday, he made the decision to enlist in the Air Force, feeling called to honor Jimmy Patterson's service and continue the mission that had been cut short over the Pacific Ocean. His parents were initially resistant, fearing that military service might intensify his connection to traumatic memories, but ultimately supported his decision when they saw how much purpose and direction it gave him. Jake's recruitment officers were amazed by his instinctive knowledge of aircraft systems, navigation procedures, and military protocols that typically required extensive training to master. The therapeutic resolution came when Jake was able to process Jimmy Patterson's death through guided counseling that honored both identities while helping him develop healthy boundaries between past and present experiences. Dr. Chen worked with Jake to understand that while he might be carrying Jimmy's memories, he was also his own person with his own life path and responsibilities. The nightmares gradually decreased in frequency and intensity as Jake learned to acknowledge and honor Jimmy's experiences without being overwhelmed by them. The families of Prairie Rose crew members found comfort in Jake's memories, even if they couldn't fully understand the mechanism by which he had accessed them. Martha Patterson Hendricks established a scholarship fund in Jimmy's name to support young people interested in military service, and several other families created memorials that honored their lost loved ones while celebrating the mysterious way their stories had been preserved and shared across generations. Jake's connection to the crew provided a sense of continuity and remembrance that helped heal decades of uncertainty and grief. Jake's story inspired renewed interest in locating Prairie Rose's wreckage and recovering the remains of its crew members. Advanced underwater exploration technology and Jake's detailed memories of the crash site have provided new leads for search teams working in the Pacific. While the aircraft has not yet been found, the search continues with hope that modern technology and Jake's unique perspective might finally bring the crew home for proper burial and recognition of their service and sacrifice. The case also influenced military mental health protocols, as researchers began exploring whether some cases of combat trauma might involve connections to historical conflicts that transcend individual lifetimes. Jake's experience suggested that understanding the spiritual and psychological dimensions of military service might require consideration of consciousness phenomena that extend beyond conventional medical and psychological models. His story provided hope for veterans struggling with unexplained trauma, while opening new avenues for research into the lasting impact of warfare on human consciousness. Years later, Jake's military service honored both his own calling and Jimmy Patterson's legacy, as he became a navigator on modern aircraft while maintaining his connection to the World War II crew whose memories had shaped his life. He speaks at veterans events and military memorials, sharing his unique perspective on service, sacrifice, and the enduring bonds between those who serve in uniform across different generations and conflicts. His story serves as a bridge between past and present, ensuring that the sacrifices of World War II servicemen continue to be remembered and honored by new generations. The mystery of Prairie Rose and its crew remains partially unsolved, but Jake's memories have provided answers that no amount of historical research could have uncovered. His connection to Jimmy Patterson demonstrates that some stories transcend the boundaries of individual lifetimes, ensuring that heroism, sacrifice, and love of country continue to inspire long after the original storytellers have passed into history. Whether through reincarnation, spiritual connection, or some other phenomenon, Jake's experience proves that the bonds forged in service and sacrifice are stronger than death itself. If this extraordinary story of courage echoing across generations has moved you and deepened your appreciation for the sacrifices made by our service members, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to our channel. Your support helps us continue sharing these remarkable cases that honor our military heritage while exploring the deepest mysteries of human consciousness. What do you think connects Jake to Jimmy Patterson and the crew of Prairie Rose? Could the bonds forged in military service really transcend death itself? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to hit that notification bell to stay updated on our latest investigations into the phenomena that remind us that some sacrifices echo through eternity, ensuring that no hero is ever truly forgotten.